Krishnam samanuvrateshu Jaru Bhagavat Parspakama Na neither Va like this Idam this Rajarshi saintly king Varya the chief Chitram astonishing Bhavatsu unto all of you Krishnam Lord Krishna Samanuvrateshu unto those who are strictly in the line of ye who Adhyasanam seated on the throne Raja Kirita helmets of kings Jushtam decorated Sadhya immediately Jahu gave up Bhagavat personality of Godhead Parspakama desiring to achieve association. Translation: the sages said, O chief of all the saintly kings of the Pandu dynasty who are strictly in the line of Lord Sri Krishna. It is not at all astonishing that you give up your throne, which is decorated with the helmets of many kings, to achieve the eternal association with the personality of Godhead. Purport: foolish politicians who hold political administrative posts think that the temporary posts they occupy are the highest material gain of life, and therefore they stick to those posts even up to the last moment of life, without knowing that achievement of liberation as one of the associates of the Lord in his eternal abode is the highest gain of life. The human life is meant for achieving this end. The Lord has assured us in Bhagavad Gita many times that going back to Godhead as eternal abode is the highest achievement. Prahlad Maharaj, while praying to Lord Nrsimha, said, O my Lord, I am very much afraid of the materialistic way of life, and I am not the least afraid of your present ghastly, ferocious feature as Nrsimhadeva. This materialistic way of life is something like a grinding stone, and we're being crushed by it. We have fallen into this horrible whirlpool of the tossing waves of life, and thus, my Lord, I pray your lotus feet to call me back to your eternal abode as one of your servitors. This is the summit liberation of this materialistic way of life. I have very bitter experience of the materialistic way of life. In whichever species of life I have taken birth, compelled by the force of my own activities, I have very painfully experienced two things, namely, separation from my beloved and meeting with what is not wanted. And to counteract them, the remedies which I undertook were more dangerous than the disease itself. So I drift from one point to another, birth after birth. And I pray to you, therefore, to give me a shelter at your lotus feet. The Pandava kings, who are more than many saints of the world, knew the bitter results of the materialistic way of life. They were never captivated by the glare of the imperial throne they occupied, and they sought always the opportunity of being called by the Lord to associate with him eternally. Maharaj Parikshit was the worthy grandson of Maharaj Yudhisthira. Maharaj Yudhisthira gave up the imperial throne to his grandson, and similarly Maharaj Parikshit, the grandson of Maharaj Yudhisthira gave up the imperial throne to his son Janamejaya. That is the way of all the kings in the dynasty, because they are all strictly in the line of Lord Krishna. Thus, the devotees of the Lord are never enchanted by the glare of materialistic life, and they live impartially, unattached to the objects of the false, illusory, materialistic way of life. Translation: the sages said, O chief of all the saintly kings of the Pandu dynasty, who are strictly in the line of Lord Sri Krishna, it is not at all astonishing that you give up your throne, which is decorated with the helmets of many kings, to achieve eternal association with the personality of Godhead. So this is the sages speaking. In the previous verses, it described how all the devatas and the sages assembled at this time, and they were praising Parikshit Maharaj for his fast until death. So here the sages actually speak, and they're glorifying Parikshit Maharaj. And the essence of what they're saying is that what you're doing now, giving up your throne, is not very remarkable for you, because you're a devotee of the Supreme Lord, and you care nothing for the wealth and the power of being a great king. So this is a very true statement in the case of Parikshit Maharaj, and therefore he was willing to simply sit down and fast without competing at all. Now today's the election in America, and they're all passionately campaigning this way and that way, either to get the power or to hold on to the power. And it's like a life and death struggle between the two candidates, and it's more or less a struggle of America itself between these two political parties. And this is in great contrast to the example we have here of Parikshit Maharaj, who didn't struggle at all to maintain his kingdom and fight against the curse of the Brahmana's son or against the snakebird himself. You know, he didn't worry about any of that. And the reason is that he had a higher taste. In the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 2, after discussing how it is so difficult to control the mind, and in fact more difficult than controlling the wind, then of course Arjuna says, yes, it's very, very difficult, but Krishna says you can do so by practice and detachment, and you must do it if you want to advance in a spiritual life. But after explaining more things, then finally he says, if you have a higher taste, you can give up the lower taste. If you don't have a higher taste, you can't give up the lower taste. So this is a very simple principle, and we'll see that operates in material life also. People are attracted to something, and then they get something which is even more attractive. They give up their interest in the lower thing, and they go for the other thing. But if we don't get the opportunity for the higher taste, then we'll stick to the lower taste. At the same time, we also understand that a higher taste involves a higher sense of perception. Some people are stuck in a lower taste, and they think this is the highest taste. So this is tamagun, the mode of ignorance. We completely attach to our enjoyment, and we can find nothing else beyond that. And even if something else is offered, which is much preferable, those people won't take it. They'll be stuck on that type of enjoyment. But that's a tamagun mentality. Other persons, when they get the higher taste, then they understand that it is better. And particularly if one is going towards sattva gun, then it is very easy to make a nice choice, and we choose the higher over the lower. We choose long-lasting benefits over short-term benefits. We choose food which is healthy rather than food which is just tasty. So we make good choices. This is very sattvic. So that is why the mode of sattva gun is preferred by Krishna and Bhagavad Gita of all the three gunas. Sattva gun gets praise over the other two gunas because when you come to sattva gun, you can make nice choices. So you can choose very nicely the higher taste over the lower taste there if the opportunity is given. And that's exactly what people in sattva gun do because their nature is to get a higher taste of the Atma, or the spirit, over the body. They naturally have a feeling for something higher than the material body. So this leads to knowledge of Atma, or knowledge of soul. And the people in Sattva Gun gravitate towards this type of thing. So this is the higher taste. So we can say it naturally arises in Sattva Gun to get this higher taste. But of course this higher taste is a relative higher taste, but it's better than material taste. So in the context of Bhagavad Gita in chapter 2, more or less, Krishna is talking about you should get a taste of Atma over a taste for identifying with the body and enjoying material sense gratification. So if you can develop that taste for Atma, good. But as I said, very difficult unless we are in Sattva Gun. We're not going to appreciate Atma at all. So that is why we can give simple books like Coming Back or something to some people and tell them, okay, read it, it's a nice book, and they'll look at it and they may read it. So, I don't understand any of that. They give it back to you, give the book back to you. Other people will take it and say, oh, this is quite interesting. So some people, they get the opportunity, but still doesn't strike them at all that there is something beyond material energy and enjoying in the material world or just living material life. So that's unfortunate. So sattva is therefore preferable. However, there's a higher taste than the Atma, or the soul also. And that is a taste for Bhagavan, a taste for the Supreme Lord, a taste for Krishna. This is a higher taste than the Atma even. It's also rare. So devotees are rarer than Gyanis and Yogis. Yogis, of course, and Gyanis are rarer than materialistic people. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, thousands and thousands of people, how did anyone knows me in truth? So a devotee is even rarer than the Gyani and the Yogi. So to appreciate the higher taste, higher than the Atma, that is a taste for Supreme Lord, that is very, very rare. But that's the highest taste. Even there, we have gradations. So for us, Krishna is the highest taste of all the different forms of the Lord. Okay, Vishnu's okay, Rama's okay, but Krishna's got the sweetest taste. So that's the highest taste of all. So that's even more rare. So bhakti itself is rare for Vishnu or Rama or Nrsimhadev, but bhakti to Krishna is even rarer. And it's also the sweetest, but it's the rarest. So a very, very great treasure. So in any case, we have to try to get that higher taste. To get a taste for the soul or the Atma is good, better than material life. And from that, you can get liberation from the material world, liberation from birth and death. But if you want bliss, real bliss, that's the highest taste, then you have to recognize that Supreme Lord and worship the Supreme Lord. So therefore, the real taste will arise when we start performing bhakti yoga. And then we get the highest taste of all. With that, it is easy to give up all of this, the kingdom and the position and the power, as we see here with Parikshit Maharaj. It is not difficult at all, not because he's a Gyani or yogi, but because he is a devotee of Supreme Lord. So that's the highest taste of all. So therefore, he can very easily give up this material world. Of course, if he were a Jnani or a yogi, yes, he would also easily give it up. In fact, he probably wouldn't even become king if he was a Jnani or a yogi. He would not take up the role of a king at all. It was useless. But the devotees are a little different because they're very flexible and they can fit into all sorts of situations. So Parikshit Maharaj had the highest taste for Krishna, but at the same time he was carrying out his activities as a king. And similarly, Yudhisthira Maharaj was a great devotee of Krishna, but he was also carrying out the activities of a king. So this is a little bit unusual from the point of view of jnana. You would want to give up everything, but they performed all these activities. How could they do that? Because they were fixed in a taste for Krishna. And all of their ruling of the kingdom as a king, that was also part of their service to the Lord, and that gave sweetness to their relationship with the Lord. So Yudhisthira fought the battle of Kurukshetra for the Supreme Lord, not because he wanted to get power. They did it to glorify Krishna. In the Bhagavatam, there's in the 10th canto, there's a discussion of the Rajasuya sacrifice in which Yudhisthira performs this huge ceremony to more or less show that he's in charge. This is, of course, before the Battle of Kurukshetra. At one time he did this. So the question may be asked, well, what's the point of a great devotee of the Lord trying to show his power over the whole world? And so the answer is that Yudhisthira Maharaj didn't do this for himself. He did this so that he could glorify Krishna. That's all. So he took this position of being the king and showing his power of everyone so he could show everyone that everybody should worship Krishna. That's all. And everyone should glorify Krishna. So he wanted to use everything in his kingdom for the glorification of Krishna. That's why he did it. So in other words, his operating as a king, which looks material, God want from some point of view, it's actually part of his higher taste, his service to the Supreme Lord. And that was similarly the case of Parikshit. So as long as he ruled, it was not a taste for ruling, it was not a taste for anything except a taste for service to Supreme Lord Krishna. So he could maintain that and still go on with these so-called material activities of ruling over everything. At the same time, because everything must end at some time in the material world, Parikshit and Yudhisthira were not attached to the material bodies, and if death were to approach, they didn't have any fear of it, because they understood that they have an eternal relationship with the Lord, so the body is only a temporary feature. And they were not attached to the kingdoms, so they could give it up very easily. So Yudhisthira very easily, voluntarily gave up his kingdom and gave it to Parikshit. And here Parikshit's giving up his kingdom to his son, Janamejaya. And it's done not with pain and anxiety, but with great joy. They very easily they give all of this up. And the reason is higher taste. They have a relationship with Krishna, and that is the sweetest thing of all. So these transactions in the material world are not very significant for them. Whatever they do in whatever body they are, they're eternally related to Krishna, and they have some taste and some happiness and some joy out of that relationship. So therefore these things are very, very secondary and only operate as part of their service to the Lord. So therefore they can do this, and it's not therefore surprising, as the sages say, it's not surprising that Parikshit can give up all of this because he's attached to the Supreme Lord. So that attachment to the Supreme Lord gives rise to a very great experience of bliss. So that is the higher taste that the devotee ultimately achieves. And because of that, everything else is secondary. So, as I mentioned previously, sattva gun, if one comes to sattva gun, then one can begin to choose higher taste over lower taste. That is atmagyan and soul over material enjoyment. But there's not so many people fixed in sattva gun, and there's not many gyanis in this world. So it's a little bit rare to come to that position of choosing the higher taste over the lower taste. But with bhakti, this choice becomes easier. It is not limited by your gunas. So anybody can take to the process of bhakti. He does not have to be in sattva gun, which would limit the choice of who can take to bhakti. So bhakti is open for everyone. It is not limited to sattva gun people. So it's beyond the gunas. Of course, we do know that shraddha or faith is the qualification for bhakti, but faith may arise in a person in tamagun. And if it arises, fine, then you can do bhakti. Or it may arise in a person in sattva-gun also. But sattva-gun itself is not the cause of developing faith. So it could appear in any person, not necessarily in a sattva-gun person. Whereas understanding the Atma, not the body, and developing a taste for getting liberation, that can only take place when you're strongly fixed in sattva-gun. And it won't take place otherwise. It won't take place in the tamagun people, or the rajagun people, or whatever. So that is why in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, do not disturb the minds of the ignorant people. Don't tell them to do jnana and give up everything, because they won't understand it anyway. It's impossible for them to do. They can't do it. So don't disturb them. You engage them in karma yoga. And after many, many births of gradually controlling their senses, they rise up to sattva gun. Then they can take to, you can preach to them about jnana and giving up material enjoyment, etc. So the bhakti process is a little more flexible, and it's open to all people, in spite of the fact that it's higher than the jnana, because the taste is higher and it's rare, but it's open to more people. So though Krishna says bhakti is very rare and out of thousands of people hardly one knows him in truth, that's true in one sense, because devotees or bhaktas are rarer than jnanis and yogis. But at the same time, bhakti is more available to everybody. It's not restricted by the gunas. So the only restriction is faith. And what creates the faith is not the gunas. What creates the faith is the mercy of devotees. So bhakti is only rare because devotees aren't giving out enough mercy. Then it becomes rare. So if the devotees give out mercy, then it becomes more common, and then faith can develop, and then more people can take to bhakti in whatever guna they are. Therefore the devotees can spread bhakti and give mercy to people in all gunas. They may not have faith, but if they keep spreading the mercy, eventually they can develop faith. So that is and once they get the faith, then they can begin the process of bhakti. So the devotees have two levels of preaching. One is the general level. Let everybody do something. Get exposure to Krishna, get prasadam, hear the holy name. Fine. We may not see results in this lifetime for those people. They may not become devotees and put on tilak and whatever like that. They may become favorable. Okay, they hear kirtan, they say nice, but they never take part. Others may not no apparent reaction at all. They don't do anything. They just walk away. Nevertheless, there is an effect. So that effect of bhakti is the mercy at the beginning stages. Over many lifetimes, if it develops, then faith develops, and then they become serious, and they become inquisitive about bhakti. Then we can actually preach to them. So we have two levels of preaching: the general way in which we expose people somehow or other, even by accident or unknowingly, to bhakti. That's called agyata sukriti. And the other way is by directly preaching to people. But as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita at the end, do not preach to the faithless people. Do not preach to the envious people. You give Bhagavad Gita only to the people that have faith already, which is a much smaller group of people. So the direct preaching from Scripture is more limited than the general preaching of Nam Sankirtan and Prasadam and things like that. So the devotees have to recognize this also. There's two levels of preaching. And it's not one or the other, it's both. So within ISKCON also we have a little bit of a controversy about this. How do we preach? So some people are more into the indirect methods and stuff like that. Some are people, you just got to do kirtan and distribute the books and that's it. As Prabhupada did it like this, we got to do it like this. And others say, okay, no, we got to take a little more gentle approach, and they can attract them with yoga or rock festivals or whatever, and different things like that. And no, that's a deviation from Prabhupada. So we get this little bit of a controversy about which is the best way to preach. And ultimately, it shouldn't be a controversy because there's both ways of doing it, and it's according to the different types of people. You cannot preach directly to the apparatis and the demons and the people who have no faith. And that's one of the offenses of the whole thing. Don't preach to the faithless people. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says the way we preach to the faithless people is by letting them hear kirtan. That much we can do. Somehow or other, they should hear the kirtan a little bit like that. Good, that's good. That's the preaching. For people that do have faith, then we can directly give them books, explain philosophy and theology to them, etc. So we have the two levels, and both are necessary also. Without that first introduction, they'll never get to the second stage. So, in that way, we have to see that we have different types of preaching according to the people. But the thing is that there is preaching on both levels in bhakti. With other processes, jnana and yoga, you can't do that. There is no preaching to the people that are not in sattva gun. This doesn't work. So it's only to the people in sattva gun. And how do they get to that level? They go through karma yoga. They follow the varna ashram system and they get purified over many births. Then they come to the topmost level. So therefore bhakti is more suitable for getting people to the higher taste because it includes everybody. It may be a little gradual, but yet it's much quicker than the other process of going through the whole varnashram system and elevating yourself to sattva guna and then going to jnana. So, therefore, through the process of bhakti, through the accidental or agata sukriti process, and then through the direct process, all people get an opportunity to advance and develop their higher taste. And this way, they can become free from this attachment to their kingdom and whatever. So, of course, not everybody's a king. In one country, we only get one king. But everybody has a little kingdom also. So everybody has their house, everybody has their property, everybody has their family, and that's their little kingdom. So everybody's attached to that. They may not be understanding about this king of the, like a Parikshit or Yudhisthira, king of the whole world or king of the whole country, but nevertheless, everybody has another problem, and that is their little kingdom. That is their immediate area of control, whether it's a family or company or whatever like that. Everybody has their little area of control, and they're king of that group, and they're attached to that. They're attached to that position and the power and the wealth and whatever, like a little kingdom. So, same problem was there for everybody in the material world, and very difficult to give up unless we get the higher taste. So if we are fortunate to take to the process of bhakti, then it becomes much easier. So here we have an ideal example, a person with the greatest position, greatest wealth, and greatest power, and greatest fame. And this person very easily gives up everything. So surprising from the modern point of view, but not surprising to the sages, because they understand that if you're a devotee of the Lord, then the whole material world is useless, no matter what position you have. So, therefore they say, it's not at all. Because this is a person who's associating with the Supreme Lord, and his goal is simply to establish and maintain that relationship with Krishna. So, not astonishing at all. Okay, any question?
You mentioned somebody even influenced by the mode of ignorance can take up bhakti, but you would presume that they wouldn't remain in ignorance.
Yeah, obviously they transcend the gunas. We say in Bhagavad Gita, one who takes a devotional service is transcendent to the gunas.
So exactly what does transcending mean? Does it mean the influence of ignorance dissipates, or we no longer have the attraction for activities in the mode of ignorance?
Well, yeah. As Rupa Goswami explains in Nectar of Devotion, the first symptom of bhakti is klesha agni, destruction of suffering, which consists of karmas, the cause of karmas, which are desires, and then the ignorance behind that, where we think we're a material body and we want to enjoy in the material world. And this, of course, all of this produces gunas in the material world. So all of this gets destroyed by the process of bhakti. When we start the process of bhakti, it begins, it's not complete, but it starts to get destroyed. So we go through the process of anartana vritti, in which the desires and the gunas and the karmas get destroyed as we go through bhakti, through nishta, ruchi, asakti, up to bhava. So they automatically get destroyed without having to, make any other arrangement for destruction of gunas.
So when somebody has progressed, can it be many years in bhakti and sometimes seeing that bad habits come back?
Yeah.
Is that the influence of the modes coming back, or
Yeah.
how does that happen?
Well, of course, one is that if they don't practice properly, they don't get purified properly. So if they have lax service or inattentive chanting and whatever, inattentive bhakti, and they don't have that much faith, and they casually do the bhakti, then, and they kind of just do the minimum external actions so nobody criticizes, then they're going to progress very slowly. So therefore, the gunas are not going to disappear so quickly, and they're going to sit there with them and cause problems. And then if they do advance to a certain stage, if they don't maintain that status and they commit aparads, for instance, then they can go down again and start manifesting gunas and bad activities, bad desires, sinful activities, etc. again. So it depends on the efficiency of the process of bhakti and ultimately the surrender and devotion of the person involved and his intention to try to advance, then he can advance. If we don't want to advance, then it's a little bit difficult to advance. So we have to have that strong desire to advance, and then we can do it. We'll find the appropriate means, suitable means for, advancing. But that means, some commitment to the process. If we have no commitment, then of course it works, but very, very slowly. And in that process, then we will manifest so many gunas and anarthas. Oh.
Thank you for the class. I really liked your analogy of, your summary of sort of Sattva-guna, Tamaguna. Of like, Sattva-guna going for long.
Oh, okay. Long-term benefits rather than short-term benefits. Yeah.
I was just wondering if you have one for Rajaguna.
Oh, Rajaguna is very much also the short-term benefit, which is poison in the beginning but nectar in the end. That's the sattva gun. And wood is nectar in the beginning, poison in the end. That's the raja gun. In other words, and then the tamo gun is completely useless, completely destructive. They don't care whether anything happens. So these are the people that take drugs and alcohol and meat and smoke and do everything, and they don't care even if someone says it's bad for your health. They don't care. The Rajagun people, they may understand, and to some extent they try, but it's impossible for them to control their urges. So again, they just get stuck on enjoying for the moment, in spite of the fact they may know it. Sattvic people, they can give it up, intelligently. They'll give it up and say, "This is bad for me, therefore I won't do it." So that's the difference, Tamagun is very destructive. Rajagun is destructive, but if they find that there is a material benefit in it, they'll try to do it. So they'll understand, okay, that's bad for the health, so I'll try to do that because I want to stay healthy. If they don't want to stay healthy, of course it's not there, but if there's some material motive, then they'll do it. If there's no material motive, they won't do it.
Historical fact, Maharaj. I might be mistaken, but I understood that Parikshit was the son of Uttara and Abhimanyu.
Grandson of...
And the grandson of Arjuna.
Or Arjuna, yeah.
But here it says that he's the grandson of Maharaj Yudhisthira.
Well, in Sanskrit, usually they kind of make a general thing because he's the third generation. They'll just call him the grandson, even if he's not technically the bloodline. He's the uncle, I guess you will say, grand uncle, is he?
Yeah.
Grand uncle, technically. But we find that also they often merge the relationships into more general things like that. So there's somebody called the brother, but he's actually not the brother. He's the uncle or something like this,
And I presume because Maharaj Yudhisthira was the emperor, that he had that.
I guess he's the grandson in the sense of who was the king, in that sense. Okay. Fine. Okay. Hare Krishna.